If you've ever flipped your ski over or turned the water hose on first when flushing your ski, then this video is for you. I'm checking a no start condition on this ski, and you should stick around to see what I found. On this model, it is best to remove your seat and lower seat base to get best access to the engine, wiring, and starting system components. This is how much more accessible everything is when the seat base is removed. Before taking anything apart, you should first check and clean your battery connections and make sure your ground cable and battery connections are tight. You should also load test your battery and verify it has nearly 12 volts after the load test. What I do to get best access to the starter solenoid and starter wiring is to cut the fuel hose tie strap and remove the airbox top and intake boot from the airbox and throttle body. When you have the airbox top removed, just fold the portion inside the airbox over on itself to push it out of the box, then remove the breather hose from the intake boot and the throttle body clamp. When you get the intake boot removed, this is what you'll be looking at: the starter solenoid and all wires going to it. In order to get to the starter, you need to disconnect all of the wiring going over the intake, including the ignition coils, fuel injectors, the thermos switch, and air temp and pressure sensors. The last sensor you need to disconnect is the exhaust cooling temp sensor plug, so you can pull the wiring out of the way. The intake manifold is held on by 4 12mm bolts and 2 acorn nuts. There are 2 bolts at the top and there are 2 hidden bolts at the bottom of the intake. When you get the intake manifold removed, you'll be able to see the starter, but it's still kind of buried by hoses, cables, and the engine breather. If you remove the engine breather, it makes removing the starter a lot easier, but if your engine is still full of oil, you should leave the lower breather hose connected. There are 3 hoses on the breather and 3 bolts holding it to the engine. You can either lay it out of the way to remove the starter or remove it completely if you drained your engine oil. This is what the whole assembly looks like removed. These are the bolts you remove to get the starter out if you are replacing it. Once I got the intake manifold off of the ski, I found the manifold was completely full of water. Since this intake has a ribbon behind the throttle body and the larger plenum is below the runners, the manifold holds about a gallon of water in it if the engine sucks in water. The best way to empty it is to pull the manifold off and dump it out. Then you can spray some brake clean through it to rinse it and use compressed air to blow it out. What I found after cleaning the intake manifold up is that the customer had someone try to turn the engine over multiple times by jumping the starter solenoid, and they burned up the starter and the solenoid. If you can't get the starter or engine to turn over, then you should remove your starter to bench test it. I'll show you how to do that next. Remove the 2 starter mounting bolts and remove the starter from the engine. You can leave the main red cable on the starter or take it off. It doesn't really matter for the test. When bench testing starters, I like to connect the positive cable first and touch a ground cable to the body of the starter to check it. If all it does is arc or spark and not spin, then your starter is likely bad. This is what a healthy functioning starter should sound like: smooth and strong. You will end up with black arc marks on the starter from touching the ground clamp to it. I typically always clean grounds on starters before reinstalling them, so you should do that before reinstalling it. If you plan on opening your starter up to see what's wrong with it, take note of the lineup marks on it so it goes back together properly. Since I got no response at all from the starter on the EX ski, I decided to take it apart and see if it was salvageable. I had no idea I was going to see this much damage. The whole inside looked like it had melted down and it smelled like an electrical fire. 85% of the time, you can take apart OEM starters, clean them up, and get them functional again. But this one, I'm pretty sure is toast. I had a little time today to see if I could clean it up and get it working again. From what you can see, do you think it worked? No, it actually didn't work at all. The armature had gotten really hot and melted down, and the brushes were pretty much worn down, nothing left on 2 of them. That starter turned into a part starter, and I just decided to replace it with a new SPT starter. When you get ready to put the new starter on, it is a good idea to install the power cable on the starter. This is what it looks like installed. The SPT starter worked just fine once installed, but now that I finally had a new starter and new solenoid installed, I still had to dry out the airbox and blow out the remaining water in the cylinders. Don't forget to check my video description and the comment section for links to all of the products used in this video that I recommend. I dried out the remaining water in the airbox and used the new starter in a plastic container to blow out the excess water in the cylinders. When I was done with that, I fogged the cylinders, installed new spark plugs, and changed the oil to have it ready for the water again. Hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it helpful. Please smash the like button to support us and subscribe to our channel to see more cool videos like this one, and I'll see you in the next video.